Hello guys, Tommy B here. Just a quick video here, but an important one for you guys and something that not a lot of people consider when they make music or try and make things really top quality in the sense of samples and synthesizers and all that kind of stuff. And what we're going to be talking about today is sound retriggering. What is retriggering, you might say? Why is that relative to my production? That's a very good question. So essentially, retriggering is when the audio phase of the sound that you're using or the synthesizer that you're using changes with each note played. So if something was re-triggered, it would play at the same phase every time that you're going to make the sound happen, basically. And if it's not re-triggered, it would be changing and oscillating in phase, essentially, leading to, say, for example, a wider signal instead of a signal directly through the middle. That's just an example. But I thought it was a little bit intuitive because I was doing an audio master and I noticed something from one of the clients that I was doing a master for. We're not going to name the client because it's not his fault. He just didn't realize that this was actually a thing, really. And what I've noticed basically, a lot of the time when you use the FL Studio sampler and you enable an envelope, what it does is it actually changes the phase of the sample every time it triggers. I'm not sure if it's because the plugin's not linear or whatever it is. I don't know the answer, to be honest, but I've just noticed in my own productions, especially, I dabble in a bit of hardstyle and I dabble in a bit of different production elements, and you want those kicks to re-trigger. Say, for example, if you're not sampling out your kicks to make them re-trigger at the same time, you want them to just be in the mix and you want to apply pitch effects and whatever else you could possibly be doing. I've been noticing that using a volume envelope on the sampler in FL, it actually oscillates the phase. Well, I say oscillate, I don't know if that's the right word. It changes the phase of the kick every time that it gets triggered, basically. And I mean this by, if you just look at this example and you actually look at the physical waveforms, you can see it's the same kick, but that kick has got a nice sort of, try and zoom in a bit. This kick's got a nice punchy start and then it kind of comes out. This one's got like a weird, it's like it ducks weirdly there. That doesn't have that there. And then this one's just completely different. And then, so further on and further on. So, that's completely different to this one. That's completely different to the last one. And what you hear is, if you look into an oscilloscope, I've been using LFO tool as the way of looking at this. You can actually see that it does change phase. So, okay, well, so hold on. I'll get it in time first. Sorry, that's my bad. The kick changes. It physically changes in its composition. And when that's happening in your mix, you're trying to get that punchy, loud mix that's just perfectly pure. If your kick's oscillating or phasing like this, you're going to get all kinds of problems with your bass. Like it's just, generally, depending on how you design your sounds, basses will kind of go through the middle. You'll have maybe a bass layer that goes around the sides and stuff. I would suggest that you do them separately, so you have one through the middle and the one on the sides. You don't have to. You can do whatever you want, really, but it's just when you listen to it in a big system, you notice those changes. So if you had a bass line here and the kick was re-triggering like this, the phase would actually change of the kick, which would make contradictory bands collide with each other, and essentially you're not getting that clean mix. This also happens in other ways as well. I've noticed the sampler does it. I think I did test this actually today before I made this video, and it seems like FL Studio 2025, the newest version, doesn't seem to do this, but all the other versions do. So maybe they've fixed it, maybe they've made it some sort of linear kind of plugin. And linear plugins also as well don't edit the characteristics of the transient of the sound, but they still allow for a modification of the sound, if that makes sense. You can look into linear phase EQing and effects and all that kind of stuff separately, because that's like a 10-minute video in itself. So this can also happen if, say for example, you have a drum loop, something like this. I'll try and find something quick. Say for example, you have a drum loop like this, which is clearly, say, these frequencies are the same. If I pull this to the side like this, they're triggering. What's funny is it's actually not identical now that I look at it, which is exactly the characteristic that I'm talking about with the FL Studio sampler. It should be exactly the same, but it's not, because this was obviously edited, because you can see that the transient ends suddenly when it should kind of go like that. That's an example. Like, this is obviously edited in FL because it has the loop points and all that kind of stuff, but essentially, like, you want it to be like this. You want it to be one sample, and you want to go like this. And you know it's going to re-trigger on the same thing because you're using the same sample. So I suppose in the sense of, I'll explain two things. So in the sense of this loop, if I wanted to change the track from 130 to 120, that's actually probably what's happened. I realize now. If I changed it to 111 or something, you'll be able to see that there is significant changes in the characteristics of these things. See, like, that's a much sharper, larger signal. This is a bit sort of quieter. The end transient's kind of similar as well, but I've got to find the original tempo of this, because that's really interesting. What I'll do is I'll do an untimed sample, because that might be a bit easier to explain what I'm doing here. I'll find an untimed sample. So I'll find something like this. Like, this is kind of a good example. So this is not retimed in any way. If you look at the mix, it depends the way that if it's being produced on FL or not. I hate that FL, you can't really get a good accurate sample change, but essentially, so have a look at these. Hold on, we're gonna see that that's 125. It's been not triggered again. Let's have a look at the waveforms. And you can see it. Exactly. You can see. Look, this is not re-triggering the same. It could be because there's a bit of bleed from the last sample, but I think it's suspicious because it just looks a little bit different. See, look at that. There's a massive point there, and there's no point there. So essentially, you can already tell that that's phasing differently. So if I put this through again my LFO tool, you'll be able to see that it is changing in phase. See, it's oscillating. You don't want that. And I think, like, a lot of the, like, crappy sample packs and stuff, they won't address this, because a lot of the guys are just guys like you and I who, like, just want to put a sample pack together or whatever. They're not going to consider the phase issues or the mix down or, like, all those humongous issues. So what you can do is, if you're like, oh, I really like the way that this kick is sampled, let's see if it does phase correctly. It should, now that it's the updated FL, but it might be different. So if we go like this, so FL has fixed the issue. It does re-trigger perfectly. So that's honestly a really good thing. So FL Studio 2025 has somehow solved this issue that's been an issue in the past for a lot of people. So what you can do is, say for example, you've got a kick, you really like the way the kick is. Say I want this kick. I really like this kick. All you have to do is just, for example, just put an Edison. So I'll drag this over so you guys can see it. Put an Edison after whatever effects you have on your kick, and just record a couple of these different kicks. This is theoretically if your kick was phasing. generally the first kick on FL was always the one that was the most similar to the original sample, but it does change, and you might find that the slight changing of the oscillation may actually work in your mix. So what I do is I'll find the kick that I want, and then you just highlight it, double click highlight, and then you just drag it in. And then you just use this sample. So you can hit shift like that, or you can use the sample start feature, which is a awesome feature that FL didn't have. And that will basically determine the initial phase of the kick. And then all you have to really do is either just paste it into the mix that you're doing itself, or you can just use that sample as it is, without the sampler. I don't know what this one is called. It's just like the audio sampler without the actual ADSR thing in there. And that's a surefire way to make sure all your drums and everything like that hit absolutely on point every time, and you won't have those phasing issues. You'll be able to get a super clean mix. If you smash the shit out of the limiter, you should still get a clean sound because you're hitting those triggers perfectly on time. So yeah, I know I had a bit of blabbering on here, but there is a lot of good information in this video. So yeah, if you did skip to the end, actually just watch the video, because there's a few different things to consider. And yeah, hopefully you guys have learned something that will actually help your production a lot. So thanks guys, much love, Tommy B out. Cheers.